Good morning, YouTube. We are here at Alamo City Harley-Davidson here in the gorgeous San Antonio, Texas. Today we're going to be test riding the 2018 Fat Bob 114 edition. Now, if you've been a fan of the channel for a while, you know that we've already ridden the 107. Link to that review down in the description. But today we're going to be riding the 114. Pretty much everything between the 107 and the 114 is exactly the same aside from that motor. So let's go ahead and hop on and see how she does. So before we get started, a little bit about myself. In case you've never seen a video and this is the first time on the channel, my name is Justin. I run this channel here called Bike and Bird. I am 25 years old. I've been riding since pretty much the age of 3. Raced motocross a good portion of my life, but I've only been officially licensed for the street for about 8 years. I've owned and ridden everything from 1000cc sport bikes down to your lower grade cruisers like the Harley 883, touring bikes, you name it. I have probably ridden some sort of variation of it. I do also want to note that even though this test ride is being put on with association with Alamo City Harley-Davidson, it is in my contract that I am allowed to voice my opinions as much as I would like, whether they be positive, negative, or indifferent. So you are going to get my pure, unbiased opinion. So I literally just got done test riding the 107, so I'm going to be a little bit, I'm just warning, I'm going to be a little bit enthusiastic on this one just because this bike just, I mean, it feels so similar to the 107 because aside from the motor, everything else is the same. But a little side note in case you've never seen any of my reviews, I'm going to hit the interstate here in a second. It's going to be a little bit hard to hear, but don't worry, I'm only on there for a short segment. After that, I take it on some back roads, do a little bit of some turns, and then run it through some neighborhoods and some urban environments, things like that, so you really get to see the bike perform in different environments. So you definitely feel the power of the 114 higher in the RPM range than I thought you would. You really don't feel that much of a difference in the torque. So I'm assuming that you get a lot more horsepower out of the 114 than you do the 107. But as far as torque goes, yeah, you can feel it at this speed. I didn't feel it so much like the 0 to 60. But just going from, you know, 65 and hitting the throttle, you definitely feel that extra power. So far on the interstate, everything is exactly like the 107. I highly suggest you go and watch that video first, just because it's going to be hard for me to touch on everything that I touched on in that last video. You do feel a lot of wind on the highway, but of course with this bike having no fairing, no windshield, that's to be expected. But even at 70 miles an hour, the bike still feels planted. It doesn't feel like you're getting thrown around or beat up or anything like that. It feels planted, it feels solid. It's got torque for days. That's one thing that I really have noticed difference just so far is at these highway speeds, even in 6th gear, it's just, the bike just gets up and goes. That would definitely be beneficial to have, especially if you do a lot of highway rides or interstate riding where you're, you know, overtaking cars and things of that nature. So one thing I love about the Milwaukee 8 motors is just how smooth the downshifts are. Such a world of difference from the 103s. But I will say though that the 107s do feel smoother than the 114s. I don't know if that's just a placebo effect, me thinking I feel it, but I've ridden multiple 114s today, I've ridden multiple 107s today, and I feel like the 107s are just smoother. So this bike does have the ABS option. That's nice to know. I am a big fan of ABS. I feel like the technology is great. I had ABS on my Speed Triple back in the day, and it saved my butt a few times. So definitely takes some getting used to, but definitely a good technology to have in a bike. So while we're getting into the twisties here, let's go ahead and look through the screen here. You've got your gear indicator on the right. You've got your range, clock, RPMs, odometer, trip A and trip B. So your standard Harley screens. Everything up in the hand controls is what you'd expect to see. Left blinker, right blinker, mode, horn, ignition switch, things like that. Let's see what this baby can do. Man, 70 miles an hour, just like that. Wow, this bike is impressive. Even with this being the second time on this model of bike, going through those turns is just, the bike feels so planted. I feel like I could push it so much further before it even thought of giving out on me. The nimbleness. Oh. Well, if that's not a perfect example, I don't know what is. The nimbleness of this bike is ridiculous. Even with it being over 600 pounds, it's just, oh my god, so much lean. Just literally just the slightest input just throws the bike sideways. And I feel like I'm not even close to dragging peg. So coming up into this rough section, I expect it to handle just like the 107. And it is. It's you definitely feel the bumps, but they're soft enough to where it's not causing any discomfort or anything like that. Yeah, guys, this bike is just awesome. I really enjoy this bike. I mentioned this on my other video, and it's would this be a good starter bike, and who would this bike be targeted for? I feel like this bike, although definitely targeted towards the younger demographic, I feel like if some older people got on this bike, they would be pleasantly surprised. I feel like they would have a very good time on this bike if they could just give it a chance and not judge it by its futuristic looks and things like that. Harley's got to change, guys. The future of the bike industry is kind of unknown right now, so they've got to be progressive. They got to be pushing the envelope. So I believe that they are going in the right direction with this bike. And would this be a good starter bike? I feel like the 107 could probably be. 114 also maybe, but that's really going to depend on your maturity as a rider. If you're a mature rider and can respect the power, I feel like you could start off on either bike. The seat height is pretty low, so it's good for some shorter riders. Not the lowest of the Softail line, but it's still fairly low. But I would honestly chalk the 114 up to be a better bike for someone a little bit more experienced, not only just in riding, but also advanced riding, like handling the turns, throwing the bike into the corners and things like that. Just because I feel like you would need those skills to really get the most out of this bike, to really put this bike through its paces. Alright guys, so we're arriving back here at the dealership just to kind of wrap up this test ride. Like I said, I know I mentioned a lot of things the same as the 107 just because they are such similar bikes. I guess the real question that is probably on everybody's mind is 107 or 114. So you're looking at a price difference of about $1,700. That's MSRP. Now, $1,700 is when you break it over, 5 years, you're paying payments, probably not going to be that much of a difference. Now, if money is a big issue for you, and this is basically what I would break it down to, is if you have the riding abilities to ride this bike how it's supposed to be ridden and are able to really squeeze out that 114, I would say spend the extra $1,700. If you feel like you have any doubt in your mind whatsoever that you wouldn't be able to really ride the 114 to all of its abilities, the 107 still has plenty of power. You can definitely feel the difference, but they are close enough to where you'd be justified in not spending the extra money for the 114 if you didn't feel like you could get everything out of it. Well guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. If you have any questions on this gorgeous 114 Fat Bob, please feel free to leave them down in the comments and I will answer them as soon as I possibly can. Also, if you come out to Alamo City Harley-Davidson here in San Antonio, Texas, please let them know that Biker Bird sent you. That way they can allow me to do more test rides in the future. If this is your first time on the channel, please go ahead and hit that subscribe button. I've got multiple Softail reviews up on the channel right now. I'm also going to be doing reviews for every single 2019 when those are released next month. Other than that, thank you for watching. I'll see you guys next time.